Hello, party people. My name is Clay, and I wanted to tell you about my favorite books that I read in 2022. I hadn't been reading most of the past few years. I'd really fallen off the whole reading for fun train. I did creative writing in college, and I obviously read then a lot, but since then I've really fallen off. I make video games for my day job, and most of my free time goes to playing those, so it just took a while, but I really got back into things this year. And I know I'm not watching as many as a lot of like these book YouTuber people do. I'm not gonna have like hundreds of books here, but yeah, I just want to go through them. And if you're wondering, this is not one of the books I read this year. I'm using a stack of books underneath here actually, which I'll show you at the end if you're curious. Which I won't know until you watch it, so I'm gonna assume you're curious and show you. But I took this idea actually from a Jack Edwards video where he used a box to stack his books against, and I thought that was pretty smart. So yeah, I took your idea, Jack. Sorry. I doubt you're watching it, but hey, if you are, love your channel. Anyways, let's get into it with the first book, which I thought I was gonna love more than I did. I didn't dislike it. There was a lot of parts I didn't like about it, but I was a little disappointed by it. And that book is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. It's a short little fella, but with one of the most incredible opening lines of any book. This dude wakes up and he's a giant insect. And it doesn't take it to the places I think it could with that premise. It has an interesting approach where it really focuses on kind of the mundanity of his life. Like, I kind of wanted him to like get out of the house. I guess spoilers. This book's been around forever, but sorry. And he doesn't even leave his room, which is interesting in its own case, but it doesn't make it super compelling. Plus, there's this really weird, like, fascination the main character has with his sister, and the ending's really creepy, honestly, and not in a good way like the premise would have you suggest it. The book could be. It really just puts a bad taste in my mouth, and I didn't love that. And maybe it's just a sign that this book is like past its prime and hasn't aged super well, but I don't know. That scene and then just the kind of mundanity of it didn't super stick with me. With that being said, I know how important this book is to magical realism and how much of an influence it is. That opening line, honestly, I take a lot of inspiration from. I love the whole, my old writing teacher called it a fish slap, where you kind of just come out and tell them the premise right away when it's ridiculous, and I love that. But yeah, didn't dislike it, but my least favorite for sure. Coming into books, honestly, I kind of loved everything. Is that even the right way? Nope, upside down. It would have been funny to go the whole video upside down though. That would have been fun. So anyways, next one is Reservation Blues by Sherman Alexie. This is a book that I had in my English class, my junior year of high school assigned reading, and guess what? I didn't read it. I read the Spark Notes. And then I found this thing, and I was like, hey, I was doing this reading challenge with my girlfriend, my beautiful Melissa, and we were supposed to read 30 pages a day, and I found this book. I'm like, hey, I really liked a short story by this author called What You Buy, I Will Redeem, I believe. It's an incredible short story. Highly recommend it. I was like, hey, I'll check this book out. And it didn't disappoint. It has a really awesome musical theme throughout. It's about a band from a reservation in, I believe, Spokane, Washington. And it just goes through the lives of this band and their aspirations, and they're given a big shot. And it's really heartbreaking book, but it's also beautiful, really funny. It's kind of weird. I don't know why it landed this low for me on my ranking list. I really did enjoy this book a lot. I think it could have just pushed on its themes a little harder. And I don't know. It just, his short story I do much prefer to this book, but still a great book. Would highly recommend it. And Sherman Alexie I love his writing. It's so simple. Like, there's no fluff at all. It just gets straight to the point, and I love it. So, Reservation Blues. Sorry for, oh my lord, I put it upside down again. There we go. That's a lot of light, I'm sorry. Probably should've. Whatever. We're already into this thing. All right, the next book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book, super cliche, but out of all the books I read this year, this one was definitely the most like page-turnery book. Like, I blazed through this thing. Again, really simple writing style, which actually I think sometimes that's detriment as well, but it just made it so easy to read. I think the characters are really amazing in this book. I mean, Evelyn Hugo is really interesting. It went places I didn't think the character would go. A really beautiful love story in this. Lots of great secondary characters. I do wish that the main character who is writing about Evelyn Hugo was more defined. I didn't feel like there was like a really big twist in this book, and I didn't feel like it completely paid off because I didn't think the main character was quite characterized enough. But with that being said, I still think there's really great scenes in this book, great characters, great moments of dialogue. It's funny. And yeah, I know it's being made into a movie, and I actually think, controversial opinion, I think this story could be a better movie than book. Like, so much of this just screams for like incredible, like Oscar-worthy performances and just the drama of those scenes, being able to see them acted out. I think so much of this book isn't really about getting into like the interior, like thoughts of the characters, which is like the most important thing about that distinguishes books as a medium, in my opinion. So I really think it'd be a great movie. So let's see what happens. Loved this book though, so don't think just because it's the same with Reservation Blues, just because it's here does not mean that I didn't love it, because I did. So, hey, right side up. Boom. All right. Next on this list is a writer I actually saw when I was in college, and he came and visited our school and revealed he read some of his poetry to it. I bought his poetry book at the time, also a great book. And this is, I believe, his first novel, and that is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This book is tear-jerking and super sad, for sure. So don't go into this with like expecting something uplifting, for sure. But I think the single thing I love so much about this book is Ocean uses all of the senses to describe his scenes. Like, so many books just focus on imagery. They focus on the beautiful sky or blah, blah, blah. There is not a single sense that he doesn't. You hear the scenes, you see them, obviously. You feel the scenes, like he talks about just the temperatures of the room, the feeling of touch, the smells of everything, the taste of everything, which is a very underutilized thing. And like every single scene is so alive. As a game developer, I personally felt like this book felt like, I know it sounds weird, but it had some of that like same tangibleness that video games do. Like making games is all about like different mediums coming together, like artists and sound and game design, and all these things come together, and that felt the same way the senses were utilized here. It felt like more than one person was writing this book, even. Like, it was just so interesting. And I think the things that I didn't love quite as much about this book is it is kind of a memoir. I didn't think the plot was super focused, which is kind of, at times I thought that aided the book because it felt very stream of consciousness and made it feel very raw, and other times it made it feel like it didn't quite have sense of a ton of purpose at times because of that. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but would have liked to have been a little stronger on the plot side. And then I think it kind of overwrites at times. Like, he's trying to go for like a knockout punch with every sentence, and like sometimes you can just, you know, keep going without having like everything be like an incredibly profound metaphor. Like the imagery and the characters developed here and the relationships carry so much weight, and I wish sometimes those could breathe and just kind of speak for themselves. Because and the love story and the characters are incredible in this book as well. So yeah, a great book. I think this is one of those things that like I might have more negatives towards them than some of the other books on my list, but it just blows it out of the park in some other ways that like it's still great, and it still goes pretty high up in here. So here we go. I'm getting the hang of this thing here. Next is the book I most recently finished, and I listened to it on Audible, so I just have a piece of paper surrounding another book. So I know it's kind of unprofessional, but I don't have the book. The next one I have is, well, you can't see that at all, Night Crawling by, I'm forgetting the author, Leila Motley? Leila? I'm not sure. I might cut this part of the video out. Night Crawling. This book, and yes, I have a wine glass here that sticks it down. This lighting's awful. I'm so sorry. Night Crawling is, again, I read so many sad. These books are sad. This one was really, really sad. This book is based off a true story. Takes place in Oakland, which is a very well characterized location in this book. And this book puts a light on corrupt policing and the life of sex workers, and I think it does an incredible job of shining a light on these sometimes not talked about enough aspects of life. And this book is really important, I think, to read, and the author does an incredible job having you empathize with the main character. It's gorgeously written. Again, similar to the Ocean Vuong book, I think the author sometimes tries to go for the literary knockout punches a little too often, and the story is really compelling in itself, and those moments didn't need to be as frequent. I think it kind of slowed the plot down a little bit, but this book doesn't pull any punches. It really, everybody kind of has tragic things happen to them, and we learn to love these characters, so we feel for them. And this book will definitely stick with me. There's some really like hard to read scenes in this book, and it's beautiful though, so highly suggest it. Let's see if I can move any of these. Nope, that's worse. No. All right. The lighting is the lighting. I'm sorry. Okay. The next book is incredibly different than the last two. This one, wow, hardcover. Hey, I love me a hardcover. But this book made my jaw drop. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me cringe. It made me nauseous. Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This book is so out of control. Like the first 30 pages, it's so interesting. So it's a book called Earthlings with like whatever this cover is, which I have no idea where this relates to the book, honestly. Oh, that's the, all right, no, it just clicked. But I won't, that's a spoiler, I guess, a light one. But it's like called Earthlings, so it's like, is this gonna be sci-fi? I didn't know almost anything. I just heard this book was kind of crazy. And you go into it, it's super mundane at first, and then there's just like these conversations between two of the characters, like this isn't typical. and it's not typical from there. There's some really wild scenes, some disturbing scenes in this book, but it's so unique. I've never read a book like this before. It has elements of magical realism, kind of, but it's so interesting. It's like it's so grounded, but it hints at a lot of those kind of things. And there's some, I think the pacing kind of goes down a little bit towards like the middle, or like the back third. Like it comes out with such a strong punch, and then it's just kind of, a lot of it's the aftermath of that, which is important too. But yeah, it's really funny, really messed up at times, and the ending was wild. But this book, it's as out of control as it really is at times. It does a really great job of creating empathy for like people that like aren't like, don't fully conform to society, or a little different, and then just really makes it, I don't know, this is like I think this book kind of teaches the golden rule, like treat others how you want to be treated, and because it can mess people up for life if you don't give people the respect that everybody deserves. So I think this book has a lot of great lessons. A little rough on pacing at times, and I know it sounds wild if you've ever read this. I think it could have pushed things even further than it did, but I loved it. So yeah, this lighting is so bad. I'm so sorry. Earthlings, look at that glimmer. The next book, this one's an old one, very short, and I loved it. It is called A Streetcar Named Desire. I believe I stole this from my friend Sam, so thanks, Sam. I will give it back to you next time I see you. But this book is a play, actually, and the characters are, the dialogue is impeccable. Like, it's so realistic feeling to me. The characters are all fully defined. I mean, look at this beautiful Marlon Brando here, and his character is kind of awful, but it has some redeeming qualities too. Every character is kind of flawed, but also has redeeming qualities, and it's kind of a tragedy. Some of the reason it didn't go a little higher is there's some stuff that definitely hasn't aged super well in here. It's pretty sexist and racist at times, honestly. But with that being said, I still believe this book has a lot of important messages. It almost feels like Shakespearean to me, but like in a more modern and American setting, I guess. And yeah, I love this book. So, Streetcar Named Desire. Boom. Next book is another short one. A lot of these books are short. Books don't need to be long. I'm just saying, like, they don't need to be. There's so few books I've read that I've finished that are like over 400 pages. It's like you can get a lot done in a little. Just saying. Anyways, this book, heartbreaking again, like so many of these other ones, and it just has so many great messages about how to live your life, how to help other people live theirs. And yeah, it's called Panenka by, let's see, what is it? Ronan Hessen? I'm not great at pronouncing names, I'm sorry. This book is about a professional footballer, soccer player, wherever you are in the world. And a Panenka is when you kick a penalty kick right down the middle. You don't, because most of the time the goalie goes right or left, and it's like, it can trick them, but it can also be like, if the goalie doesn't move, it's like kind of a problem. And this way that the main character kicks this goal is a reflection of who he is in a really interesting way. Like this, I personally love sports. Like, I love football, I love soccer, I love basketball, all that. And not many books like use the symbolism of the way the game is played itself, not just like that they are an athlete, just like the actual way the sport works, and makes that into like something thematic. And I thought that was so interesting about this book. But yeah, this book is just, it talks, it's like one moment in his life defines his entire life, and this is kind of about him realizing how this has defined him and maybe how it shouldn't have. And just, he meets someone really important in his life, and it kind of makes him see things in a new way, but like at the same time, like it's realistic. It's not like it completely does. And this book is super grounded. It's super human. Not superhuman, not like superheroes. Like it feels just so relatable, and just I don't know. It's very literary fiction for sure. But I loved this book. Beautiful moment. It takes a while. Like, even though this book is like tiny, it takes till like the middle there to like really pick up. But I think a lot of that's establishing mundanity is important to this, so I loved it for that too. And this book will stick with me. We got 2 more to go. So next on the list was, how long is this book? All right, 289, still decently short. I thought it was longer. But yeah, I loved every page of this book. It's just, this book was equal parts like entertaining and just like soap opera, almost soap opera. Like, what's gonna happen next? Who's gonna deceive who? Who's gonna be sweet to who? Oh, hey. And yeah, it's fun like that. But it's a heartbreaker story about love, and I'm gonna just show it to you. It's called My Policeman by Bethan Roberts. This book just goes, it has so, I don't know if you can tell by this, I really like plot heavy books, like books where there's just like scene goes to scene, and I think this book is really well paced in that. There's lots of dramatic irony, meaning like you as the reader know what's gonna happen to these characters, but they don't know. And yeah, it does a great job of that. And this book is, it's all about love, and it's this love triangle that establishes, and there's so much nuance into this book. Like, characters are both, you understand where they're coming from, you don't want to judge them, but the things they're doing are hurting others. It's just always on, like, these characters are always in the middle of what you should think about them. And yeah, I thought it was incredible. As you can see here, right here, it was made into a Prime Video movie, My Policeman the movie, that had Harry Styles, which I don't know if you noticed, he's been back there the whole time. So I didn't set that up or anything, but there he is. I'm gonna be honest, that movie wasn't great. I think there's a few things. One, I don't think this book was all in letter form. A lot of it was about, like, as I was talking about earlier, like seeing the characters' inner thoughts, and I don't think it super lends itself well to a movie. But the biggest problem this movie had is it was way too fast. There'd be scenes that were like completely integral to the book that they spent like 10 seconds on, which felt so strange. Like, wait, like if I didn't read this book, like that scene would have meant nothing to me. Like, there's like there's another teacher that one of the main characters works with, who's like has a pretty important role to this book, and then she has like 2 minutes of screen time at most, but it still tries like pack the punch that she's supposed to in the book, and it just feels super rushed and forced. Sorry, Harry, I think you're better at music than acting as well. I know this isn't a review of the movie, I guess it's turning into it. And the biggest thing is it doesn't have like, it doesn't give you enough time to kind of like have the nuance of the book, so it just feels like rushed scenes without like the nuance. It kind of just feels like a Cliff Notes version of it. So sorry, this was not supposed to be about the movie. It's supposed to be about the book, which I thought was amazing. But yeah, stick with this book, I'd say, and not the video, the movie. You do get to see some incredible like scenery shots of like the ocean side in, I think it's called Brighton in the UK, which is incredible. But yeah, this book was great. Maybe not as much, but yeah, stick to this one, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Okay, and we're at the final book. Again, when I listened to on Audible, My Policeman was definitely my favorite book until I think this is the second to last one I read this year. And this one, it wasn't. This is by far my favorite book of the year. It was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. So this book is a I don't want to say light fantasy. It definitely isn't light fantasy. Like there's totally there's albatrosses, there's magical houses, blah blah blah. But it's definitely a magical realism fantasy. Like all of the fantasy has like a symbolic meaning to it. And this book just at first I'm like, what is happening? Like this dude is walking around this house describing all these like corridors, and just like the 127th corridor has this statue in it. I'm like, what? Okay, cool. But this thing just rolls out like a red carpet in front of you. So slow. Just, I was so curious what was gonna happen. Incredible. There's only like a few characters in this book. It's a very like isolated world they live in, and they have so much tension between them that develops, and it's such a fascinating book. It's magical, it's really tragic, and it's so spellbinding to me. Like it just caught my imagination in so many ways. It made me question so many things about like the world we live in, and like meaning, and like what truth is about how we live our lives, and very Matrixy almost in that way. But it was like this just awesome book, and the ending, whoa, like I'm still trying to process like what it was really all about, and there's so many interpretations. Another thing, like this book has so many interpretations, and they're all like have really interesting themes of like depression, or like how, I don't know how literal to take this book. I think it's equally as interesting if you take it completely literally, if you take it completely metaphorically. Like I think it's both are completely like valid ways to interpret this book. So yeah, if you're a magical realism fantasy, it doesn't have dragons, it's not Game of Thrones, but it's got some magical elements to it, but it also has like this really human story to it, and just lots of themes. So anyways, this has been the video. So from the top we got Piranesi, followed by My Policeman, Panenka, A Streetcar Named Desire, Earthlings, Nightcrawling, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Sherman Alexie, and where are you? Metamorphosis. So those are my favorite books. I'll probably do this again next year. I'm gonna make some more videos. Some are gonna be about game development as stuff. I really want to make a video about video games to play if you're not really already an avid gamer, and just like kind of by your personality type. Again, sorry Jack, I've watched a video of yours and I loved it about like suggesting books to people based on like their personality type. So I'm like, might as well do the same thing for video games. So yeah, I'll come up with that video soon, but thank you for watching. My name is Clay, and I'll see you in the next one.